What's up, gaming heroes? Welcome back to another awesome World of Warcraft video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how you can get better as a raider, go from average to good as a raider on a whole. This is really like a video that a lot of my viewers actually requested in my Discord and through comment section, and that's completely fine. It's something I'm really passionate about is raiding, so I'm going to share my thoughts, feedback, and tips for you guys in this video. Quick disclaimer, I'm not an expert, but I'm good at going from average to really good at raiding, and I've helped a lot of people on their journey from going from, not very good as a raider to getting really good as a raider. So I'm going to be sharing my tips and tricks for how you can improve on a whole in this video, and this is for DPS, healers, tanks, whatever it is you are, this applies to you. If you have thoughts, feedback, and advice, please feel free to put them in the comment section below, but that I will not be arguing with anyone, so if you do come with at all any toxicity, please expect your comment to get deleted because it will not be sticking around. We're here to help people, not argue. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright guys, so you're a raider now. You're getting in there, you're probably doing normal, heroic, getting yourself started with raiding, and you want to go from an average raider to a good raider. You're not looking to be a pro, but you just want to do good at raiding, whether you're a healer, DPS, or tank. Whatever it is, you just want to get the tools in your arsenal so you can just get better at the game when it comes to raiding. That's completely cool. That's great. I'm going to cover just briefly what it is that I do on my rogue in order to improve as a player as the raid tier goes on. First is first, if you're a damage dealer, get yourself a damage add-on. So, a damage done here, that's kind of a perfect one for you to use. If you need to use one, grab something like that. That will do you. You're fine. If you're not using it, when you're outside a raid, just make it small. Whatever it is you need to do. Okay. Obviously move that as well away from this side of the screen, ideally, and have it somewhere near the middle. The middle is really where anything important needs to go. So when you're in a raid, the last thing you want to be doing is looking up here at your buffs. The last thing you want to be doing is looking up here at your frames. So I highly suggest you right click your frame, you go down to move frame, unlock frame, and then you can drag and drop it to where it needs to go. Okay, and it's super easy just doing that, and I like to actually move these around sometimes, so I'm just going to lock that in place now. I'm happy with kind of that positioning. I don't care about the OCD stuff. If it's slightly out, it's slightly out, whatever it is. The main thing is this is towards the center of the screen. This is raiding. We're here to raid now. We're not here to look pretty and prance around and stuff. We're trying to do our very best at the game right now, and for that to happen, we need all the information right there on the center of the screen so we can just get it immediately. Another little tip, if you're a melee player, and this is also good for range as well, but if you're a melee especially, I often think it's a better idea to take almost a bird's eye perspective when you are raiding. This is so that your weak auras doesn't cover your feet, and so you can still see what is actually going on below your feet and avoid AoE quite easily. This is a really good tip. A lot of the people that I know play like this with raids, and they're like, well, how can you see the boss? How can you see ads? How can you see the entire room? How can you even see what's under your feet? That's insane. So simply by going all the way out and taking more of almost a bird's eye perspective, it allows you to see a lot more in the raid and makes you a bit faster on your feet as well. Another one is add-ons. Add-ons are super useful. Weak auras, this is one I've got here. I know my rotation perfectly, but what I can't keep track of, because I don't think the human brain is really built like this, is keeping a track of your buffs. As a rogue, I've got a lot of different buffs, and for example, got like slice and dice, got to keep an eye on. So there's my slice and dice, there's my roll the bones. Let's put these two up as well. There's pretty much everything I've got. Sepsis shock. My brain cannot think of all this stuff at once. It can't keep a track of these numbers in its own head as to, when things are coming off cooldown, etc, etc. Oh, I need to press that button. This is just a really good visual aid that's near my feet that I'm able to constantly keep an eye on as I'm just doing my raid. So this is a really good, useful tool. And to get this, all you need to do is install an add-on called Weak Auras. Yeah, if you have a look here, it's called Weak Auras. And then once you've got the Weak Auras add-on, you can go to the Weak Auras website and search your class and your spec. And people will have made a weak aura for that class and spec. It's as easy as that point as typing in on World of Warcraft /WA and going into import. And then when you're in import, click paste. You know, you obviously copied the information from the website and you paste it in, and it will say import, and you just import it. Super easy. I use Devlin Rogue, and then I use Mythic plus keys. So whenever someone does ! keys, it will show in the chat what keys they've got. It's quite useful. But yeah, that is super useful. And oftentimes in raids, your raid leader will give the guild or the raid a weak aura, which will basically allow you to do the boss a bit easier, which is super useful, believe me so. A couple more awesome add-ons to use are DBM and Big Wigs / Little Wigs. Okay, they're just really good add-ons in general, and they get the trick done. See, Little Wigs, Big Wigs, etc, etc. These are just really good and useful. They just give you tactics as you're in the boss, and they yell at you when you're stood and stuff, which is actually quite helpful, especially for a melee, to say the least. Now we've got the basic add-ons out the way, I'm going to move on to the slightly more complicated ones that, you know, a lot of people just miss out on altogether, okay? I don't need to really cover in this video. I don't think I need to cover basic things like coming with consumables, your flasks, your food, your oils, your sharpening stones, your Vanitas runes, your heavy desolate armor, your veiled augment runes. I'm sure I don't need to cover, you know, that you need to come prepared and buy your actual stuff. There should never be an excuse of, oh, I can't afford this item for the raid. They all just require professions. Go learn that profession. Don't come up with an excuse. Just learn the profession. If it's, you know, flasks and potions you need, go learn the potions and the flask, the alchemy. And then herbalism, go farm them yourselves. If you need to do that, just do it. Or just learn the mission table and get good at the mission table, and it will give you loads and loads of stuff that you need for the raiding, which is super easy. I mean, I gave my dad 60 of every herb yesterday, and he made me a bunch of potions. I am an alchemist, but I'm not an alchemist to actually make stuff. I'm only an alchemist to get the 2-hour buff when I use a flask, which is quite useful for me. Now, complicated add-ons. If you're looking for an add-on that puts all your add-ons into like one little bar like this, it's called Mini Map Button Bag Reborn. So that is one word mini map button bag space reborn. Okay, super easy. There you go. All right, now I've got a lot of add-ons here. You don't need all these add-ons. I'm only going to talk about, I think, 2 add-ons here that are kind of like vital, I would say, for you to have. Simulation craft is so important for you to have if you are going to take yourself seriously as a raider. This is so useful. So this is basically like raw data that is taken from your character. This is just to say who your character is: rogue, human, 60, silver moon, and engineering, alchemist. These are all the pieces of gear that you've got, and the enchants and the gems and everything like that you've got on them. And you simply copy that, okay? And then you go to the Simulation Craft website, which is raidbots.com/symbol. At this point, we can go to top gear, and whenever you basically are in a dungeon or a raid and you aren't sure if a piece of gear is good for you, just roll on it if you need to. And, you know, if it's not good, you can roll it out again if needs be, or give it to the person who was next highest in the roll. And you simply paste in your data there we just took from the add-on, and then it will show you all of the gear in your bags, and it will basically say, compare this gear and tell me what the highest damage I could potentially get from this. So let's just, as an example, I don't know, put like a sword and a dagger there. I know it's not going to be very good. You can also change your enchants, your rings, everything like this, and this will tell you what's best to go for. You can also change your spec here, not your spec, sorry, your conduits there, and then your spec here, and this will tell you what technically you'll do more damage with, which is really useful for just like figuring out what spec you should go based on your stats, because your stats will basically change what spec potential you should go for. So for example, as a rogue, I've got a couple options. As a rogue, I can either go for Blade Rush or Killing Spree, And depending on, you know, my haste, it depends really on which I should be using. And it also depends on which boss I'm fighting. Killing Spree can have its drawbacks because it can be risky if it's a boss that does like really quick spells, for example. Additionally, if you're really like low on haste as a rogue, your energy regeneration, so if you look here, increased attack speed and energy regeneration. So if your haste is really low, you kind of have to go vigor until you get your haste up. And at that point, it's a good time to go deeper stratagem. Again, people sometimes go for marked for death, but you know that simulation craft will actually tell you what will put out more DPS for you on a whole, which is like kind of perfect for what it is you guys are looking for. So we'll just wait for this to load and then we'll be right back. Okie dokie, it is all done now. So at this point, we can see all of my gear, you know, my enchants, everything like that. And then at the bottom, basically where we selected your multiple gear, it will tell me, as an example, what my DPS would be if I swapped those pieces around. Now I can see I've got my dagger here, and equipping it in my main hand reduces my DPS by 3,227. I'm obviously not going to do that, and I wasn't even curious. It was more of just to show you an example of, you know, how this works. So if you get a random piece of gear and you just want to see if it's, you know, worth swapping or not, or re-rolling that item out to someone else, then you can do that. This also is a really good way of just like working out what type of enchants are best. This is honestly one of the most important things to use, and just in general, it's so helpful to run this sim. Every time, you know, you get a new conduit, or if you want to just try out your spec and change your spec around, that's completely fine. Just run a sim. You don't have to go to a target dummy and waste a bunch of like time doing that. You can just do it like this. It's much easier, much quicker, and it's so vital to do this. Okay, guys. Right, next one. This one's a bit of a sweaty one for some people, but I personally love and live by this personally. Okay, so warcraftlogs.com. All right, now this isn't what a lot of people think it is. So a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to read logs and stuff like that. We're not going to be reading logs, okay? So Warcraft Logs is a way to basically track a boss fight, and I'll show you an example of Warcraft Logs. So this is like the fight I think my guild did like yesterday at some point. It was one of the fights, and this like basically showed all the damage that people did and such. It wasn't a huge amount of damage, but you know, it was okay. This is an example of that right there, okay? And this is what Warcraft Logs basically is. It just shows, you know, damage taken, damage dealt, healing, threat, buffs, interrupts. It records everything. So if mistakes are made, this is a good way to find out where the mistakes are being made in the raid. Now, this is not why I'm showing you it. Why I'm showing you is for something entirely different, which is pretty cool. And this is actually how I use this to improve my DPS on a whole. So I would go to Sanctum of Domination. I would choose a boss that I want to improve my DPS on. And I'm going to go to Tarago, okay? And this is going to compare all of the best players in the world. Well, not just the best, it's going to record all players who are logging basically their raids. And it's going to show all classes, all specs, all covenants, everything like that. I don't want to see everything. I only want to see my class. So I'm going to change my class to Rogue. Outlaw. Brilliant. And now I'm going to change my covenant to Night Fae, so I can get the most accurate information for what I am trying to do right now. Now, you don't have to choose Naya. You can just go, you literally just go Night Fae and have it as Night Fae instead, if that's what you would prefer. Now, this will automatically tell you that just a breakdown of what, you know, the average person is running in terms of a spec. Now, you can see 5% of the players are using Killing Spree. The other 95% are using Blade Rush, because that just has a huge damage increase on a whole. Again, it's pretty similar with, you know, the deeper stratagem. 8% of the rogues are going to be using Vigor, and I think probably more than 8% of rogues need to use Vigor, but they don't realize that the difference in terms of, like, you know, having your haste. If your haste is too low, you want to be running Vigor instead of deeper stratagem, probably losing a huge amount of DPS. A lot of rogues are. But in general, this is how you can look at what specs are good to roll with. What pieces of gear are amazing. Like, for example, this File of Putrefaction is absolutely insane for a rogue. It's so useful, so good. In terms of legendaries, you got your Celerity, Mark of the Assassin, and Greenskin Wickers, etc, etc. Now, this is where it gets really interesting that I really like to look at, is like I choose like a few top rogues here. These are the best rogues in the world, and you ideally try and look for ones that are in your language. I speak English, so hopefully these abilities are going to be shown in English. Yes, they are. Brilliant. At this point, I can actually look at what damage he is doing on average in that fight, and I can see that his melee and dispatch damage are very, very close. So I can see as an example like what damage that they are doing with certain abilities, and I can really see that their melee and dispatch are very, very close to one another. So for example, if my dispatch damage is like lower, then I know I need to be smashing that dispatch way, way more. And that's just like something that I can keep an eye on, and is really, really useful to keep an eye on a whole. And that's it. Basically all you have to do for all of these. Spiked burrs is quite high, so I can see they've got probably a dagger in their offhand, and they're probably hitting really quick as a result of that. And this is just a good thing for me to keep an eye on. In terms of summary, I can go to their summary and just look at what their stats are on a whole. This rogue has 30 leech, a lot of versatility, and a decent amount of haste as well. I can see their conduits, which is so useful, and these are the best rogues in the world. So me keeping an eye on this stuff is just basically giving me the roadmap that I can follow for success quite easily. And then this is their spec, which is the exact same spec I'm already rolling. And in general, I can just look through their gear if I want to, which is actually quite useful because you can see, their gems, you can see their enchants, etc, etc. It's so useful to be able to see this stuff. Well, I think it's very useful on a whole. And as a player, if you notice any differences between yourself and them, maybe look up a few more rogues, like maybe open up a couple more rogues here and just see, are they doing the exact same thing as this guy? Have they got the same amount of, stats? Have they got the same spec? Have they got the same legendary? What's the dealio? What's happening there? Just click summary, and you can look at each of these rogues individually, just see what that is. So this guy's actually not near. He's gone for, I think Corian, I think it's Corian, and he's gone for slightly different ones there, so you could follow this guy's route if you wanted to, and this one's gone for near as well. So you just take, the information you can and work out for yourself what works best for you on a whole. This person's got way more haste than the other guy did, and less versatility, so they've gone for a bit more speed, I guess, in terms of damage per second than the other guy who went for pure versatility, and he's just smashing it out like that. Alright guys, so that is a good way of comparing yourself to, the best players in the world in terms of raiding, and then working out, where potentially you might be making mistakes with your spec, stats, build, everything like that. Next tip, obviously, I've already said about, consumables. Next tip is just going to a raiding training dummy, obviously getting your weak aura set up, and then practicing your rotation. It's really, really quite simple. And just by doing that, you're kind of consolidating the button pressing you've got to do in your head, and you want to be getting it to the point where you don't really need to focus too much on this. And this is one of the things that I get really pissed off in. This is one of the things that I get really pissed off in raids, is when people complain that they can't focus, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know, I can't focus on my rotation. I'm too busy listening." It's like, your rotation shouldn't be something you need to focus on. Your rotation should be so easily pressed in your own head that it's second nature for you to do your rotation, and you should be purely focused on the mechanics for that fight. You shouldn't need to be listening out constantly for, commands and everything like that. You should know the fight well enough already. At this point, if you've already got your rotation down from, practicing against a target dummy, it's as easy as just focusing on the mechanics, because ultimately, if everyone just gets average DPS in a boss, and you're all doing the mechanics perfectly, that boss will 100% go down. You don't all need to be, the best in the world, min-maxing to the max or anything like that. The mechanics matter most. So just getting your rotation down to a basic, simple, art, it's super easy for you to just in general be quite successful on your character. Alright guys, so those are just the general tips right there, just for getting yourself from average to good as a raider. On a whole, I really hope that these kind of tips helped. If you, are a raider yourself and you got some tips yourself, please feel free to drop those in the comment section below. By no means am I pretending to be a pro. Got no interest in that. I'm not going to be arguing with anyone in the comment section below. So if anyone does come to the comments seeking that, I will simply remove your comment. All the best to you guys. If you do want any more help or anything like that, hit me up at Discord. Happy to jump in a call and try my best to help out in any way, shape and form. I'm not an expert on World of Warcraft. I'm simply an average guy trying to do better in World of Warcraft. Thanks for watching. This is Erosium out, and I'll see you next time.